The amazing story of the ghost pilot. Get ready for the most incredible story you've ever heard. This is about a woman who was supposed to be dead, but came back to save the world with the coolest invisible airplane ever made. Ma'am, this is just a normal check. Please put your bag here and step back. The security guard said this like it was no big deal. But then he found something that made his eyes go wide. Ma'am, there's something else here, a hidden part. That's normal security. Stuff for secret papers, the woman thought to herself. But when they ripped through her bag at the security checkpoint, they stopped moving when they saw the hidden symbol. Colonel Sarah Ghost Mitchell thought coming back to Fort Lamb Air Force Base would be easy, just another job helping out. She was a woman the military had quietly erased from all their records. But when the checkpoint guards found the secret Night Eagle symbol hidden in her bag, they knew they weren't dealing with some forgotten old soldier. They were looking at the most dangerous pilot in Air Force history, and she was back for a reason that would shake up the entire base. The morning fog stuck to the fence around Fort Lamb as Colonel Sarah Mitchell walked up to the main security checkpoint. Her old leather bag hung over her shoulder like it was no big deal. At 42 years old, she moved like someone who had spent 20 years flying planes, where making the wrong choice in 1 second could mean the difference between winning the mission or everything going terribly wrong. The guards at the checkpoint were young, probably weren't even born when Sarah was flying her first secret missions over enemy countries. They saw a woman in regular clothes with some gray hair and tired eyes. Just another contractor or helper making an early morning visit to the huge Air Force base. Ma'am, routine check, Airman Rodriguez said, pointing to the table. Please put your bag here and step back. Sarah did what he asked without saying anything. She watched as Rodriguez and his partner, Staff Sergeant Kim, started looking through her stuff carefully. Her bag had normal things in it. Laptop files, extra clothes, toothbrush, and soap. Nothing that would make anyone worried or set off any alarms. But hidden under a fake bottom, wrapped in black cloth and locked with a combination lock that hadn't been opened in 5 years, was something that would change everything. Rodriguez's hands worked through the bag, like he'd done this a million times before. Then his fingers found the hidden part. Ma'am, there's something else in here, a hidden section. Sarah's face stayed calm, but her heart started beating faster. Standard security thing for secret papers. Kim came over to help his partner as they tried to get into the hidden part. When the fake bottom finally opened up, both guards froze at the same time. Sitting in the black cloth was a silver symbol unlike anything they'd learned about in training. It was an eagle with its wings spread wide, holding a sword in its claws, with tiny diamonds in its eyes that sparkled in the morning light like stars. Jesus, Rodriguez whispered so quietly you could barely hear him. The symbol had no unit name on it, no official markings that showed up in any Air Force rulebook. But both guards had heard the stories, the whispered legends that went around military circles about pilots who flew missions that officially never happened, who carried symbols that didn't exist in any computer. Staff Sergeant Kim reached for his radio, then stopped. The rules said he had to report any unknown military badge, but something about the woman's calm behavior and the way she watched them with patient understanding made him pause. Ma'am, Kim said carefully, I need to ask you about this symbol. Sarah looked right at him. That's classified above your security level, Sergeant. I suggest you call Colonel Harrison in Special Operations. Tell him Ghost is back. The name Ghost sent an electric shock through both guards. Every airman at Fort Lamb had heard the stories about the pilot who'd flown missions, so secret that her very existence was denied, who disappeared from official records after a mission went wrong in 2019. Most people thought the stories were just military folktales, the kind of legends that grew up around classified operations. Staff Sergeant Kim's hand shook a little as he reached for his secure radio. Control, this is Checkpoint Alpha. I need to talk to Colonel Harrison's Special Operations right now. Priority Alpha. Checkpoint Alpha. Tell us what your emergency is. Kim looked at Sarah, who nodded like it was okay. Tell him Ghost has come back to the nest. The silence on the radio lasted almost 30 seconds before a different voice came through, older, with the sound of someone in charge. Checkpoint Alpha. This is Colonel Harrison? Describe the person you're talking about. Kim looked at Sarah as he spoke. Female, about 40 years old, civilian clothes, carrying classified Night Eagle badge. Another pause. Then, bring her to Building 7, Conference Room Delta. Give her full respect. And Sergeant, this conversation never happened. As they walked across the base, Sarah felt the weight of 5 years pressing down on her shoulders. Fort Lamb looked the same. The same gray buildings, the same sound of jet engines in the distance, the same feeling of controlled rush that you find at military bases. But she was different. The woman who'd left this place in shame was not the same person coming back with a purpose. Ma'am, Rodriguez said as they got close to Building 7, can I ask you something? Sarah nodded. The stories about Night Eagle, are they true? Sarah thought about her answer carefully. Airman, there are operations that happen in the spaces between what's officially known and what's needed to keep our country safe. Sometimes, good people do difficult things so that others can sleep safely at night. And you are part of that. I was the best part of that, Sarah replied without bragging, just saying a fact. Until politics and office work decided that my kind of service was inconvenient. Colonel Harrison was waiting in conference room Delta, and Sarah was surprised by how much he'd gotten older in 5 years. His hair had gone completely gray, and new lines around his eyes showed stress and difficult decisions. Sarah, he said, standing up as she came in. I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again. Hello, Tom. You look like hell. Harrison managed a tired smile. 5 years of cleaning up the mess you left behind will do that to a man. They sat across from each other at the conference table, two old soldiers who'd shared secrets that could never be spoken out loud. Harrison poured coffee from a thermos, his hands steady despite how serious the moment was. Why are you here, Sarah? The official word is that you're dead. Ghost died in that Syrian operation. Remember? Ghost died, Sarah agreed. But Sarah Mitchell survived. And now I'm back because someone is trying to steal Night Eagle technology. Harrison's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. That's impossible. Night Eagle was ended. All the stuff was destroyed or moved to black sites. Not all of them, Sarah said, pulling out a tablet from her bag. The screen showed satellite pictures of a remote place in Eastern Europe with what looked like aircraft that shouldn't exist. Someone has been copying our stealth technology. They have test models, Tom, and they're planning to sell them to whoever pays the most. Harrison looked at the pictures, his face getting darker with each one. How did you get this secret information? Let's just say that being officially dead has its advantages. People talk around ghosts. What do you need from me? Sarah leaned forward, her eyes carrying the intensity that had made her legendary among those who knew her true identity. I need access to the Night Eagle hangar. I need my bird back. And I need you to trust me one more time. The Night Eagle hangar sat at the far end of Fort Lamb, separated from the main flight operations, and surrounded by security measures that didn't show up on any base map. As Harrison led Sarah through multiple checkpoints, each needing fingerprint scans and classified code Z, she felt like she was traveling back in time to when her life had purpose and meaning. The program was officially ended 6 months after you left, Harrison explained as they walked through the final security door, but some of us believed it might be needed again someday. The hangar opened before them, like a church of advanced technology. In the center, covered by a tarp that looked like it hadn't been touched in years, sat the aircraft that had been Sarah's life for almost 10 years. The B-2 Spirit variant called Night Eagle 1 was a masterpiece of stealth engineering, modified with systems that pushed the limits of what was physically possible. She's been waiting for you, Harrison said softly. Sarah walked up to the aircraft with deep respect, her hands tracing the familiar lines of the body. Every curve, every surface had been designed for one purpose, to get into enemy airspace, without being detected and complete missions that regular aircraft couldn't attempt. The modifications we made, Sarah said, running her fingers along what looked like standard wing surfaces. Are they still working? Everything's been kept up. The adaptive camouflage, the electromagnetic pulse protection, the quantum radar deflection system, all of it. We told the oversight committees it was for research purposes. Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the base. Tom, you magnificent bastard. You kept her operational. I kept her ready, Harrison corrected, because I knew that someday, someone would try to steal what we'd built. And when that day came, we'd need the best pilot who ever flew to stop them. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah got reacquainted with systems that had been cutting edge when she'd last flown. The Night Eagle's abilities went far beyond normal stealth technology. It could literally bend light around its surfaces, making it invisible to both radar and eyesight. The quantum systems allowed it to exist in a state of technological uncertainty, appearing on sensors as everything from a flock of birds to weather disturbance. The intelligence you brought, Harrison said, as Sarah ran through pre-flight checks, shows the stolen technology is being moved tonight. A convoy of trucks heading to a private airfield in Romania, where a transport plane will take it to buyers unknown. Then we intercept, Sarah said simply. Sarah, this isn't an official mission. If something goes wrong, if you're captured or killed, the U.S. government will deny any knowledge of your existence or this operation. Tom, I've been dead for 5 years. What's the worst they can do? Kill me again? As evening came, Sarah suited up in the specialized flight gear that had been designed specifically for Night Eagle operations. The suit connected with the aircraft, systems allowing the pilot to interface directly with the stealth technology and quantum navigation systems. There's something else, Harrison said as Sarah prepared for takeoff. The intelligence suggests that the theft wasn't random. Someone with inside knowledge of Night Eagle systems planned this operation. Someone who knew exactly what to steal and how to use it. Sarah paused in her pre-flight routine. You're saying it's an inside job? I'm saying that whoever is behind this knows things that only a handful of people should know. People who were part of the original Night Eagle program. The implication hung in the air between them. Sarah's former teammates, the pilots, and technicians who'd worked on the classified program, had all been reassigned or retired after her supposed death. Any one of them could have the knowledge necessary to steal and copy the technology. Do you have a list of suspects? Harrison handed her a tablet with personnel files. Everyone who had access to level 7 clearance or higher. 12 people, including you and me. Sarah scrolled through the files, seeing faces she'd once trusted with her life. The idea that one of them had betrayed everything they'd worked for was almost too painful to think about. I'll find out who, she said, her voice carrying the cold determination that had made her legendary. And when I do, they'll wish they'd never heard of Night Eagle. As Sarah climbed into the cockpit of Night Eagle 1, the familiar embrace of the pilot's seat felt like coming home. The aircraft systems came alive around her, responding to her touch like a living thing that had been waiting patiently for its master's return. Goes to control, she said into her headset, using the call sign that had struck fear into enemy forces across 3 continents. Eagle 1 is ready for departure. Copy Ghost. You are cleared for takeoff. And Sarah, bring our bird home safe. Roger that. Control. Ghost is going hunting. The night sky over Eastern Europe was a blanket of stars as Sarah guided Night Eagle 1 through airspace that officially didn't exist on any flight plan. The aircraft moved like a shadow given form, its quantum stealth systems making it invisible to the sophisticated air defense networks that protected the region. Ghost to control, Sarah whispered into her headset. I have visual on the convoy. 3 trucks, heavy escort, moving toward the airfield as predicted. Copy Ghost? What's your assessment? Sarah studied the scene through Night Eagle's advanced optics. The convoy was heavily defended, military vehicles, armed personnel, and what appeared to be surface-to-air missile systems positioned along the route. This wasn't a simple theft, it was a military operation. Tom, this is bigger than we thought. I'm seeing professional military equipment, coordinated defensive positions. Whoever is behind this has serious backing. Can you intercept? Sarah was about to respond when her threat detection systems screamed a warning. Multiple radar signatures had suddenly appeared on her screen, aircraft that hadn't been there moments before, rising from what appeared to be empty countryside. Control, I have multiple bogies. They're using some kind of stealth technology. Sarah's voice cut off as she realized the horrifying truth. Tom, they're flying Night Eagles. The silence on the radio was deafening. Harrison's voice, when it came, was tight with disbelief. That's impossible. There's only one Night Eagle, and you're flying it. Then someone's been very busy building copies, Sarah replied, throwing her aircraft into evasive maneuvers as the enemy planes closed in. I count for aircraft, all using our stealth signatures, all armed with weapons that look suspiciously like our own. The aerial battle that followed was unlike anything in military history. 5 invisible aircraft dancing through the night sky, their only traces the occasional flicker of exhaust or the brief flash of weapons fire. Sarah's years of experience gave her an edge, but she was outnumbered and facing pilots who clearly knew Night Eagle capabilities intimately. Ghosts, you need to abort. Harrison's voice crackled through the radio. This is a trap. They knew you were coming? No, Sarah replied, her voice deadly calm as she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. This is exactly what I came for. She dove toward the convoy, using the terrain to mask her approach while the enemy aircraft struggled to maintain pursuit. Her target wasn't the trucks, it was the airfield, where a massive transport plane waited to carry the stolen technology to its buyers. If I can destroy the transport, the technology stays here, she muttered to herself, lining up for an attack run that would require her to fly directly through the enemy's defensive fire. That's when her worst fears were confirmed. A voice came through her radio, a voice she recognized, a voice that belonged to someone she'd once trusted with her life. Hello, Sarah. I was wondering when you'd show up. Captain Marcus Webb, her former wingman and closest friend in the Night Eagle program, was flying one of the enemy aircraft. The man who'd saved her life on 3 separate missions, who'd been like a brother to her, was now hunting her through the night sky. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice heavy with betrayal and pain. Why? Because they threw us away, Sarah. After you died, they disbanded the program, scattered us to desk jobs and training commands. All that work, all that sacrifice, and for what? So politicians could pretend we never existed? So you decided to sell our secrets to the highest bidder? I decided to make sure our work meant something. The technology we developed could change the balance of power, could prevent wars instead of just fighting them. But only if it's in the right hands. Sarah felt her heart breaking as she realized the scope of Marcus's betrayal. And you think, foreign buyers are the right hands? I think anyone is better than the bureaucrats who buried us. The conversation was interrupted by missile lock warnings as the other enemy aircraft closed in. Sarah found herself surrounded, outgunned, facing the impossible choice between completing her mission and surviving the encounter. Marcus, please don't do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, Sarah. You're either with us or you're in our way. The missile launch warning screamed through her cockpit as Sarah realized that her former friend was prepared to kill her too. Protect his conspiracy. The woman who'd been officially dead for 5 years was about to become actually dead, unless she could pull off the most impossible maneuver of her legendary career. Sarah's hands moved across Night Eagle's controls with the fluid precision of someone who'd spent thousands of hours mastering impossible maneuvers. As Marcus's missiles streaked toward her through the darkness, she activated systems that pushed the aircraft beyond its theoretical limits. Quantum displacement, full power, she whispered, engaging the most classified capability of the Night Eagle program. For a split second, Night Eagle 1 existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, appearing on radar as a flock of birds, a weather balloon, and empty air all at once. The missiles, confused by contradictory sensor data, detonated harmlessly in space where Sarah's aircraft had been but no longer was. Impossible. Marcus's voice crackled through the radio. That system was never fully operational. You always underestimated what I could do with broken toys, Sarah replied, using the momentary confusion to break free from the enemy formation. Below, the convoy had reached the airfield, and Sarah could see the massive transport plane beginning its takeoff sequence. If it escaped with the stolen Night Eagle technology, the balance of global power would shift overnight. Hostile nations would have access to stealth capabilities that had taken decades and billions of dollars to develop. Control, I need options, Sarah called to Harrison. For enemy aircraft, all Night Eagle variants, and a transport that's about to take off with our most classified technology. Ghost, you're outnumbered 4-1, even you can't watch me. Sarah dove toward the airfield, using the transport plane's massive bulk to shield her from the pursuing aircraft. Her plan was desperate. Use Night Eagle's electromagnetic pulse capability to disable the transport systems, forcing it to abort takeoff and keeping the technology on the ground. But Marcus had anticipated her move. Sarah, if you EMP that plane, you'll crash it with everyone aboard. That's not the woman I knew. The woman you knew died 5 years ago, Sarah replied, but her finger hesitated over the EMP trigger. Marcus was right. Using the electromagnetic pulse would disable the transport, but it would also send it crashing into the airfield with potentially dozens of casualties. There has to be another way, she muttered, scanning her options as the enemy aircraft closed in. That's when she noticed something that changed everything. The transport plane wasn't just carrying stolen technology. It was carrying people through Night Eagle's advanced optics. She could see figures moving inside the aircraft's cargo bay. Not just the thieves and their buyers, but what appeared to be hostages. Marcus? She called over the radio. There are civilians on that plane. Collateral damage? Marcus replied coldly. The technology is more important than a few lives. The callousness in his voice, the casual dismissal of innocent lives, reminded Sarah why she'd become Ghost in the first place. Not for the thrill of flying impossible missions, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Then you're not the man I thought you were, she said, making a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of attacking the transport, Sarah turned Night Eagle 1 toward the enemy aircraft. If she couldn't stop the plane from taking off, she could at least ensure that the stolen technology wouldn't reach its destination. Ghost to control, she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. I'm going to need you to clear all airspace within 50 miles of my position. Sarah, what are you planning? Something that officially never happened. Sarah activated Night Eagle's most experimental system, the quantum entanglement, Dr. Drive that existed only in theoretical papers and classified research notes. The system had never been tested in combat, had never been proven safe for human pilots, but it offered capabilities that defied conventional physics. Marcus, she called over the radio, last chance. Call off your people and let the hostages go. You're bluffing, Sarah. You won't risk destroying yourself just to stop us. You're right, Sarah said, her voice carrying a smile that Marcus couldn't see. I won't risk destroying myself, but I will risk everything to save innocent lives. She engaged a quantum drive. Night Eagle 1 suddenly existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its quantum signatures spreading across space-time like ripples. In a pond, the enemy aircraft, trying to target something that was everywhere and nowhere at once, found their weapon systems unable to lock onto a target that existed in probability, rather than reality. Sarah used the quantum state to position herself directly above the transport plane, matching its speed and altitude with impossible precision. Then, in a maneuver that would be talked about in classified circles for decades, she used Night Eagle's gravitational manipulation systems to create a localized field that forced the transport to land without damaging it, or harming the people. Aboard impossible, Marcus breathed as he watched the massive transport settle onto the runway as gently as a feather. Marcus, Sarah said, her aircraft now visible again, as she disengaged the quantum systems. The only impossible thing here is that you thought you could outsmart Ghost? The enemy aircraft, realizing their mission had failed, attempted to escape, but Sarah wasn't finished. Using Night Eagle's advanced tracking systems, she painted each aircraft with targeting lasers that would allow friendly forces to track them anywhere in the world. Control, I have 4 bogies marked for tracking. They're yours now. Copy Ghost. NATO forces are already scrambling to intercept. As Sarah watched the enemy aircraft disappear into the night, she felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She'd stopped the theft of Night Eagle technology and saved the hostages, but she'd also lost a friend who'd chosen greed over honor. Ghost to control, she said as she turned Night Eagle 1 toward home. Mission accomplished. The technology is secure, the hostages are safe, and the bad guys are running scared. Outstanding work, Ghost. Welcome back to the land of the living. Sarah smiled as she guided her aircraft through the night sky, feeling truly alive for the first time in 5 years. Ghost was back, and the world was a safer place because of it. 6 months later, Colonel Sarah Ghost Mitchell stood in the Pentagon briefing room, no longer a woman who officially didn't exist. The Night Eagle program had been reactivated with full congressional approval, and Sarah had been promoted to lead the new generation of pilots who would carry on the mission. The stolen technology had been recovered, and the international conspiracy behind the theft had been exposed. Marcus Webb and his co-conspirators were serving life sentences in military prison. Their betrayal, a cautionary tale about the price of selling out one's country. But perhaps more importantly, the hostages Sarah had saved included Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist whose research into quantum propulsion would revolutionize aerospace technology for decades to come. Her rescue had prevented not just the theft of existing technology, but the loss of future innovations that would keep America at the forefront of aviation development. The new Night Eagle squadron will be operational within the year, Sarah told the assembled generals and defense officials. We've learned from the mistakes of the past, and we've built safeguards to ensure that our technology never again falls into the wrong hands. General Morrison, the Air Force Chief of Staff, nodded approvingly. And you'll be leading this squadron personally. Yes, sir. Ghost Squadron will be the most elite unit in the Air Force, with pilots selected not just for their flying skills, but for their character and loyalty. After the briefing, Sarah walked through the Pentagon corridors, past portraits of military heroes and displays of historic aircraft. She thought about the journey that had brought her here from a disgraced pilot, presumed dead, to the leader of the most advanced aviation program in the world. Her phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Saw the news coverage. The president is calling you a national hero. How does it feel to be famous? Sarah smiled as she typed her reply. Fame is overrated. I prefer being a ghost. That evening, Sarah returned to Fort Lamb, where Night Eagle 1 waited in its hangar. She ran her hand along the aircraft's sleek surface, feeling the bond between pilot and machine that had carried them through impossible missions. Ready for another adventure, old girl, she whispered. The aircraft seemed to hum in response, its systems coming alive at her touch. Sarah Mitchell was no longer dead to the world, but Ghost would always be ready to disappear into the shadows when duty called. Some legends, she reflected, were too important to stay buried.